Welcome to episode 4, part 4 of the Bird's Words podcast. Our guest today is Rob Gray. Rob has served 23 years in the United States Army. He is a Special Forces Green Beret and Army Ranger. He deployed 7 times at the height of the wars, spending approximately 40 months total deployed to combat zones. He retired as a lieutenant colonel in 2020 and is a 100% disabled veteran. In 2021, he was paired with a golden retriever service dog named Plato, like the philosopher, from the America's Vet Dogs with the help of the U.S. SOCOM Warrior Care Coalition program. He's the proud father of 4 sons. He has a master's degree in theological studies. He's currently pursuing a second master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. He's also a graduate of the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, where he received his commissioning into the Army. He moved to Florence, Alabama in 2021, splitting his time between here and Oregon until moving back here permanently in the summer of 2023 to be near his 4 sons. He loves the outdoors, playing soccer and doing yoga, hiking, and taking Jeep trips with his dog, painting, writing, and plays piano with a local band. His journey of faith has been with him since childhood. He served as a men's ministry director in 2 churches, is an ordained deacon, and led a pastoral search committee in his previous church. His faith has sustained him throughout his life, not only through his career in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, but through other more personal wars here at home. He's a strong advocate for veterans and children's mental health, and is equally passionate about ending veteran suicide, topics which we'll get into later in the podcast. So, 2019, you hit your darkest year, your deepest valley. You retired in June of 2020. What's next?
Yeah, so 2019 again, the continuation of not being able to see the children, descent into the darkest depression I could have, didn't even fathom. Again, the command, USASOC at Fort Bragg, I was being medically retired. They didn't want me to die on their watch, so to speak, and I went to 3 30-day rehabs that last year and a half. Yeah, and they couldn't, they couldn't sustain me forever, and so I retired. In June of 2020. I should back up and say that I finally got a court hearing in 2019. The protective orders were finally lifted. I saw my kids for 2 hours. First time I'd seen them in a year and a half. 2 hours. Also in 2019, after I came out of the first 30-day treatment I went to in April of 19, I came out and. Again, these are just facts. Was informed that she was pregnant with twins, and it was shocking. We were still married, and of course, it sent me right back into another relapse. I could not even fathom how in the world my wife was pregnant. How the kids were dealing with that, and she was, and so then I simply. I said, okay, I need to go ahead and divorce her. And so I filed for divorce in North Carolina and divorced her absolutely in North Carolina, and then moved custody, property, alimony, which is out the window, down to Alabama, thinking that would make logical sense. But perhaps in hindsight, I should not have done that. I should have just done the entire divorce up there in North Carolina in 2019. So as a plaintiff, I was granted the divorce, absolutely, transferred the rest down here, and that was 5 years ago. And so, I'm approaching retirement, and I come down here again, and denied seeing the kids. I retired 3 days later, June of 20, 3 days later, took off to drive down here yet again, probably about the 8th time now. And it was right in the middle of COVID. Came down, had bed and breakfast for 7 days, had coordinated everything. I requested that we, utilize Family Wizard. Again, something I didn't know anything about, but it's in high conflict divorces, it's a good tool. And so I came down here, and as soon as I got here, her lawyer factually filed a motion saying that they were COVID exposed, and couldn't see the kids, and
Oh, that's terrible.
so once again, 7 days. I even went to the hospital because they're my children,
Yeah.
and got the negative reports. And we filed a motion saying, okay, we've got the negative reports. I'm still here for 5 more days. I see my kids 2 hours, and now the last 20 months.
So it has the feel of a potential manipulation of the law through all these schemes.
Well, this was the same lawyer that actually called me Rambo. Yeah, factually also.
Yeah.
And so that narrative was prolific. And so that is where I would say it actually happened. I left here. We talked about identities. I've retired. I'm a 100% disabled veteran. I'm recently divorced. I have not had any contact with my children now for going on 2 years. And I'd never been charged with a crime, much less even, convicted. I hadn't had a speeding ticket anywhere in my career. Honorably retired, and have no access to my children.
You're just taking these repetitive, figurative punches in your life.
Yeah, I'm driving down here dumping thousands of dollars on bed and break for a week at a time, coordinating in advance, filing motions for Christmas gifts. I want to give Christmas gifts to my kids. Denied. Birthday gifts to my kids. Literally not ruled on or denied. For no reason given. And so, what would that do to anybody?
Oh.
And so I left here when the 7 days were up. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was. I drove in a big circle in the Deep South for about 7 weeks. And my body at that point, because of what I've been doing to it for the prior 2 years with alcohol and the depression and the isolation. I haven't mentioned that, but I self-isolated as I went into the start depression. I didn't go out and have people over. I went social. I stopped celebrating holidays, and I just drove in this big circle in the Deep South, not knowing where to go because I didn't want to go back to Fort Bragg. Mm-hmm. I couldn't see my children down here. And years earlier, I'd always wanted to go to, or I'd looked at going to the Southeastern Seminary. Eventually I got my master's in theological studies online, but I don't know. I drove to Lexington, Kentucky, and that's where I was going to finish it. Parked between I went and walked the grounds of the seminary and found a motel, literally in between a Mexican restaurant and a gas station, where I could get enough beer, liquor to sustain my body and get enough protein. At that point, I mean, these are the hard facts of it.
Yeah.
Enough protein in my body so it wouldn't be as painful as it was. But my body was violently expiring. And I was there for about 4 days and it happened. And when I was on the ground, beginning to at that point literally choke on my own vomit and could not breathe. And I knew that was it, and that was how I'd be found. And I thought about my 4 sons. Whatever was left inside of me went into emergency mode to clear my airway, to relax my breathing, to stop the shutdown of my body. And I don't want to go into further details than that. And I was able to make a phone call to a person that had given me their number. And in the event of, and that person got on the phone, it took about 30 minutes for me to get my body back under control. To then take my first visit to the VA and go to the emergency room and my body detox for 7 days. And again, it was just horrific. And so I came out of that, again, didn't know where I belonged in the world. I did manage to get back to Fort Bragg, and I had found a 5-month resident treatment center in California. It's called Treehouse Recovery for Men. And so I was back at Fort Bragg for about 3 days, and I bought a one-way ticket to California. I don't think anybody that struggles with depression or suicidality, or as I say, the lack of the will to live, I don't think they want to die. I don't think anybody truly does. They want to escape from the depression.
Yeah, the hurt is so heavy and overwhelming.
And the causation of why they got there can be any number of factors. For many people, it's childhood trauma. And that's something I don't want to skip over either. The exploitation of children and women. The abuse of children, especially young girls, can have catastrophic, lifelong impact on women, and that is what the causation was within my marriage. And I don't say that lightly. I say that to call for accountability for people that know about child abuse, the exploitation of children.
Got to do something.
Even the exploitation of young women.
Yeah.
Young women who are at drug rehabs. That stuff should be called out.
Yeah, and I think that God, it's evident from His Word when the descriptions are used on God's holy name. It's the protector of the widows and the father of the fatherless. And I think that there is a duty and an obligation and responsibility, especially for Christians. I mean, yes, humans, but especially Christians and people of authority, that if something is going on, to take a stand.
You can't espouse a faith and then turn a blind eye to actual abuse. You can't be a saint by day and a sinner by night.
Yeah.
And I think that the exploitation of children and young women occurs all around us. Many people are not even aware it's there, but a lot of people are. And I really have come to understand it in a way that I never thought I would or wanted to. But I believe that it's not spoken about enough. It's not addressed enough. It is passively accepted. And passive acceptance of any kind of abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, or otherwise, is essentially passive perpetration of that abuse.
I know this is deviating a little bit, but this goes into, I guess, judgment that we can pass on people. There was a homeless individual, and this man was very young. I mean, just out of his teenager years, late teens, early 20s, or even a little younger than that. But and it's easy to look at people sometimes, and we pass some pretty harsh judgments on people.
Society does.
And it's the easy ticket, and it's I'm not saying it's never right, but man, sometimes people are like, oh, they just threw it all away. Well, that's not always true.
Children have no choice.
Yeah, so this kid, I call him a kid, and living by the railroad bridge, his mother introduced him to heroin when he was 15 years old.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Just like it's a bowl of cereal. And just gave it to him. Now, when your family and when your own mother introduces you to an incredibly addictive narcotic and undoubtedly contributed to the circumstances of his life in an enormous way, if we just pass by and pass judgment on him, totally our fault. Totally our fault. And we do have to be aware and if people know of situations, especially involving kids, we have to stand up for them, for the people who don't have voices.
Yeah, and again, I can't believe I'm sitting around this conversation, because when I did deviate a little bit, but I think it was absolutely appropriate, because of the things that my life has intersected now, and the path God has put me on that I never in 1,000 years, what I'll be sitting here talking about, that has led to, if I fast forward all the way to right now today, and what I'm doing with my life and how I view my life, that I'm just now getting started. That the past entirety of my life, my entire career, the past 7 years, has informed what I want to do going forward.
Yeah.
And so, going to Treehouse, Justin McMillan, the founder, tremendous man, a friend to this day. It saved my life. It actually saved my life twice. That introduced me to. So I go out there. So I bought the one-way ticket, went to California, 5 months, but I'm checking in. I am just raging at life. I don't know who I am. I've lost, my tribe. I've, all identities. I'm there essentially with a lot of, 19-year-olds and guys in their 20s. I mean, that's what it was. It's 5 months. It's a very intense, brilliant program with physical modalities, 5 days a week. You go out in the ocean. They got a retired Navy SEAL, takes guys out. Therapy several days a week. You've got yoga, strength conditioning training, CrossFit 5 days a week. And you're living in and amongst these guys. And so I was introduced to an entire demographic of addicted young men that I didn't know existed. And let me say this about substance abuse too, as we talk about taboo subjects within the Christian, context, the Christian community. The issue of substance abuse, and I never drank like that in my life. I was trying to drink myself to death. I refused to do it myself. Let me just make that very clear. The suicidality was ever present every single day, hour, and minute of 2019 through 2020. I'll even say through 21, possibly into 22. And it took absolute willpower to refuse to do it myself. But passively, I was like, if the alcohol kills me, it's not my fault. And that's what I was doing. That was my struggle.
You feel like God's eyes were on you during all this?
100%. And that's what I want to proclaim, is that I questioned God intensely, but I never lost my faith. I didn't understand what was happening or the why. I just knew that, the buffalo, if you study buffalo, I heard this in a sermon once. When a storm's coming on the horizon, all the animals are fleeing from the dark clouds and from everything coming at them, the wind, the storm, they see it. The buffalo charge into the storm. They charge into the rain, and they herd and they just run and plow through it to get to the other side. It's extraordinary. And I'm not saying I did that. I wanted it all to end. I wanted restoration with my kids. I wanted the custodial battle to be over. I wanted, she's moved on, cool, even had 2 children, has a new family essentially, great, let's be the best co-parents we can be. Let's not put the children through more difficulty. And so, I do think that God had his hand. You can look back on things.
Yeah.
And you can see certain benchmarks you can't see going forward. There is no compass. There's only the path, and sometimes it's dark. You're just holding on to God, but He's leading you. And so it's not until the sunrise sometimes you can be stumbling through the dark all night long. It's just one foot in front of the other. You're being led.
That concept is. It reminded me of something. If you don't mind, I interject a little humor. A little humor in this. I was creek fishing. Look, I'm big on creek fishing. I love it. I mean, you can get in a boat, and that's a lot of fun. You avoid the poison ivy and stuff like that. But there's something about wading up a creek. Are you familiar with I don't even know how to say it, a lamprey, something like that? It's like it's like a flesh-eating fish that looks like an eel. That's here. It's common here.
Okay.
And Well, I was wading upriver and fishing.
Yeah.
Well, I get a good ways up, and there's these pockets of deep holes. And, the light is hitting the water where I can see real well. Yeah. Well, I come up on this thing. It looks like a snake, eel, flesh-eating monster out of a movie. And I look at it. And, I mean, people know what they are. I mean, I talked to a guy, and he's like, yeah, no, you'll find them in your nightmares. Well, no, I mean, they're just, I think they're, a lot of people would call them like a nightmare. And, man, I looked at this thing, and I took my fishing pole, and I lifted it up out of the water. And I saw that big sucker on it, and that thing started swimming around. I was like, I've got to get back to the car. I mean, I'm out there with it. I don't have my phone. I'll have a pair of shorts, a fishing pole, and a knife in my waistband. But that doesn't matter with this thing and my shoes. Well, I decide I need to go back, get back to the car. I look back. The light is hitting the water different. I cannot see. Oh, wow. I cannot see the bottom. I can't see the depth. I felt something on my foot. I almost went under neck deep. I'm freaking out. This thing's down there. Well, I attribute that a lot to kind of what you're talking about. It's like sometimes when everything makes sense to you and it's going fine and your life is great and it's we might even call it somewhat easy. But what about when you can't see? No. You can't feel the terrain on the bottom. And there's this monster down there. And that is so accurate of what the Christian walk can feel like sometimes, where we can't see. But I think I have found a challenge of mine recently. It's trusting God when we can't see, or when I can't see specifically. And something that I want to mention is we brought up Job earlier, and I heard this article, or I heard someone speaking about it, and it said what was interesting about it was even though he was going through these awful things, he was still present in the relationship with God.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes I have a tendency to do what a lot of people have done and what you touched on, which is isolate away from God. I'm not speaking for you, but sometimes I might hit something hard, and instead of taking the Job approach, which is no matter, and he went through something, uniquely tragic and brutal, but the point was he kept showing up all the time in the relationship with God.
Though he slay me, yet I will praise his name.
And he set an example of a different approach, which is no matter how bad you're hurting, you show up for God's voice. And sometimes I think the other side is, well, I can't see, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to isolate, and I'm going to leave that. And I feel like a lot of people struggle with that.
Well, I think a lot of people lose their faith in that. And yeah, as I mentioned, my self-isolation was away from people. It was away from family. If I couldn't have contact with my children, with my sons, who do I want to have contact with? Nobody. I couldn't be around families. I couldn't go shopping.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so painful. And so I lived in my house, and yeah, I didn't isolate from God. I think that's the point. I was angry with God, and I had those conversations, with God, as Job did. Why? What about this and what about that? And oftentimes, because I was in such a bad state, a bad condition, and I was doing it to myself, there going to certainly be a conversation about that too. What's the most perfect way to handle the collapse of your life, I mean, and so, I own it, but, I never lost that connection to God.
Yeah.
I don't want
and I want to, I want to touch on that too. Like, it's not pretty. I mean, I know that's so obvious, but I feel like sometimes people don't want to share it with other people.
Suffer well is the cliche.
Yeah, because it's not pretty. But if you would have seen me going back just from that creek adventure, it wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of different sides of me.
Yeah.
And that's just a joke. That lightens the mood. But we're talking about people's lives being crushed in front of them, and I think that sometimes when people are going through that, there's this concept, there's this fake idea that it's supposed to look pretty while you're going through it. It's like a poster instead of something authentic.
Back to social media, yeah. And it goes back to people that don't want to they don't want to touch that. They don't want to touch that person. They don't want to be associated. The deeper they go into their suffering,
unclean.
Yeah. The more they lose contact with people. You see what I'm trying to get at? It's like this diverging sense of the person is suffering. And as they suffer, they begin to lose their friends. They begin to lose contact with others. Mm-hmm. Therefore, they go further into suffering. Yeah. Then those people don't want to try to come back.
It's even more of a stigma. It's I can't get anywhere close to them.
And so I decided, and the message I would give to people that are in that suffering, and this is for them. I don't care if anybody else understands it or not. This is for them. Pursue God relentlessly. Pursue your healing relentlessly.
Yeah.
And so I went out there as a 40-something-year-old man, a retired lieutenant colonel, honorably retired from the Army, Green Beret, war vet, whatever, to a 5-month rehab because I wanted to get my life back. I wanted to figure out where I belong in this world. How do I live? How do I find acceptance? Yeah. And they got me a little bit further down the road. And in the context of my drinking myself to death, that's what I was going to say. The friends I made out there are friends to this day. I met Hawaiian surfers, professional surfers. I met guys that were Irish mobsters from the Northeast. I met guys that were rich kids. I had 19-year-olds say, "You're like the father I never had." That I'm sitting there having conversations with them at night. Substance abuse, depression, mental health issues, they don't discriminate. They're problems that touch every demographic, every sex, every race, every gender, every age. It does not matter. Mm-hmm. Christians, too.
Yep.
And so, how do we make the conversation more palatable? How is it less stigmatized?
It's got to happen. Well, first off, about the friends, did you, looking back as the old cliche goes, did you find out who your friends were?
I did, man.
Did you lose some and gain some?
I lost some and I gained even greater ones.
Yeah.
Because, the guys I went through my healing journey, and now I'm talking rehabs, in that context, that's as much a fight as combat is. You're fighting for your life. And every single time, every rehab I left, I went to 3 on active duty that last year, early 20. And to fast forward, I got back from California, went back to Fort Bragg. What's the most important thing in the world to me? My 4 sons and the environment they're living in, the people they're living around, what they're being exposed to, and the abuse that by this point I knew was happening and was even given evidence of. And so I made the decision to move down to Florence, Alabama. Not that I, again, ever saw myself coming here. And so, again, the point to your question, I lost some significant military friends and old church friends because, Rob's an alcoholic now. And Rob's been accused of all these things. He had protective orders.
Accused.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, show me an arrest record, man. Show me evidence. Yeah, and it doesn't matter once the stigma starts, because that narrative, and it doesn't matter how much factual evidence I've given to the contrary or about the things that have occurred, even 2 babies. A 3rd child was born, actually, in the year before last. And it's like, when is it going to shift?
When there is a failure to add in new and true information.
Correct.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
And that can get people hurt. That can wreck people's lives.
I'm sure in a law enforcement investigation,
it can,
in your profession, when new evidence came in, it's a twist of the case. Movies always have big twists, new information.
Well, and internally, there's actually something, you're working against the human condition sometimes, because your mind tries to fill in gaps in the story. And that's a normal thing to do, is the mind doesn't like gaps. Yeah. And a lot of times we can, even sometimes, accidentally fill those gaps in with untrue information, not on purpose, but there's training to make you good at what you do so you don't do that.
That's right.
And so even if you think you have got it locked down on who it could be or what really happened, if there is new and true information, you have to be willing to let go of the first narrative and pursue the truth,
Right,
where the evidence leads.
And there's biblical implications of that as well. Talking about truth. I mean, that again is a great point to point to, faith-wise, that, truth is not relative. Truth exists.
It does.
And we know, by our faith that, there is one true God, and then again back to this world that we live in, there's also evidentiary standard truth. And I'll say again, factually, 3 guardian ad litem's have resigned in this case over implications, of ignoring that same truth. Mm-hmm. And so,
well, there's one other thing too. We talked about losing friends. We talked about the pursuit of truth. This stigma, especially within church, bothers me. And it's not that it can't be fixed. It's just, it's frustrating because I think it's a relevant snapshot of the way that it is.
Well, if you're talking about depression, the whole pray it away thing, when people have never suffered significant loss, and they're like, give it to God and pray it away. Now let's go to dinner. Let's go on vacation. No, that's not the human condition that God built. It's not how He made us.
Well, and that's one aspect. So it's depression. Well, it's any form of mental illness. It's these wrong ideas about how people can handle things with no empathy on what they're going through. It is divorce. Yeah. Divorce in the church is, it's very every time you have a fellowship meal and there's a single person or a single parent thinking, who should I sit with?
Yeah, dude.
And that is deep. That comes from people who are struggling. And it is such a disappointment when it is handled wrong.
Yeah, you feel very judged. It can be very difficult. It can be very difficult to integrate back into a faith community, even when you want to.
Yeah, and even if it's not the intention, sometimes it's the reality that someone goes through a terrible divorce, or even I don't know what you call it. I don't know if there's not a terrible divorce. I don't know, or where which party's justified, so to speak. I don't know. There's a lot of different lens on how to look at it. But here's my thing: if you have a hurting person who wants to come sit at the feet of Jesus, I feel like sometimes when we don't talk about these things and we act like nothing's going on, for some people, I think they would really feel better if we just broke the silence. Said, hey, we love you. Jesus loves you. And unfortunately, sometimes the person who didn't ask for it or do anything wrong, so to speak, speaking very generally, they carry so much heavy guilt with them, and it hinders their path to seeking healing in Jesus. Sometimes I feel like
it can be crippling and paralyzing to life. I mean, and again, my healing journey lasted 18, the descent began. 19, I bottomed out. 20, you could say I bottomed out again. And so I made that decision to move down here, thinking, okay, I went to a 5-month place. I got cleaned up. I found acceptance. I'm retired now, honorably retired. Let me go back to court and let's get on board, being the best co-parents we can be. All is forgiven, and in a sense, I have to say thank you, to all of these, for lack of a better term, agents that acted, against me, because it pushed me further into having to pursue healing even deeper. And so I came back here. I moved here for about 6 months. Mm-hmm. Joint legal custody, boom. I divorced her. on the plaintiff, we need to settle the custodial piece, joint legal custody. They're coming here, it's 50-50. They're coming to the house. And then slowly things started to occur. And then they couldn't come as often. And then there were shifts. Her not showing up for drop-offs.
Mm-hmm.
Began to get it documented, and it, and suddenly she wasn't bringing them at all. And this
it can be a
this
terrible
new narrative emerged that they're scared to ride in his car, so I'm going to drop them off at the bookstore, and then they would say, well, we can't leave the bookstore.
The ripples are so deep and far at this. Yeah,
that's right, and that's where the children begin to become alienated, and again, you factually present these things, and there's no response, and that's why the guardian ad litem's resigned once it's addressed. And so I left again. I fell back into, after 45 days of no response, when I'm trying to address these matters and why she's not even coming to drop-offs. The details don't matter. I completely relapsed and fell back into the dark depression. Again, didn't know where to go in the world. But Justin opened a treehouse in Oregon. And so I called him up. I said, hey, man, I need to get out of here. I still don't know where I belong. So I left here again for 5 months. Went to Oregon now in the fall of 21. And ended up staying out there for about a year and a half, roughly. I kept this house down here. Still paying double rent. Got a great landlord. And I was coming and going to see the kids every time I came down here. Then I was denied overnights. I'm like, what's going on? But they knew I was here for 4 weeks. I get to see my kids 5 times in 4 weeks over the summer for 3 to 4 hours at a time.
Yeah. And
they're telling me kind of what's going on. It didn't matter because they know I'm going back to Oregon. And so finally I came down here in the fall of 22, and 7 court-ordered custodial times she did not show up for. I got them all documented. And essentially it was that collapse again. And that is when I found out about an organization called Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, founded by a Navy SEAL. And so to kind of end the years of suffering, so to speak, and to move into where I'm at now, they help special operators get to Mexico to undergo psychedelic treatment. And so let's talk about that controversial topic within the Christian community. Let's have a conversation about psychedelics. It saved my life. Let me just be very clear about that.
Yeah.
I've gone down to Mexico twice. That was attempted to be used against me, again, in custodial court.
Mm-hmm.
That he went to Mexico and did psychedelics. Now, I think it's very important to say, I think you'd agree with me, that I'm not advocating at all, in any way, shape, or form, for drug use, recreational psychedelic use, or anything else. I've done it twice down in Mexico under a 5-day protocol. Stanford University did a study on vet solutions. A number of special operator veterans that went through the protocol back in 2020 maybe, 21, something like that. All symptomatic of severe depression, co-occurring conditions, PTSD, TBIs, suicidal, etc. And it's a 5-day protocol of ibogaine, which is essentially the derivative of iboga, comes out of Africa, and 5-MeO-DMT. And
you feel like that was a pivotal moment in you turning the corner.
It was actually recommended to me by a person at the church I attended here in Alabama, of all places. I could not believe it. Now, let me tell you how God works. I'd just been reading an article about the suicide epidemic online. They featured an Air Force woman that had just taken her life, and somewhere in there they mentioned psychedelic treatment.
Well, can I read this real quick?
Yeah.
So there's an article, December 22nd, 2023, by Congressman Dan Crenshaw.
Dan Crenshaw, yep.
Yeah.
Former Navy SEAL.
Right, yeah. So legislation led to research the use of psychedelics to treat post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury in active duty service members was signed into law as part of this year's National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. Yes. Originally introduced as H.R. 3684, this provision is focused on ending the suicide epidemic plaguing our active duty and veteran populations.
Yep. Thank you, Dan Crenshaw.
And it also says, I've led this 2 years in a row in the House and now finally got it into the final bill with the Senate, said Crenshaw. I'm thrilled. This will save lives and potentially revolutionize the way we treat all types of PTSD.
Yeah, and it is saving lives. And Stanford released their studies. Dr. Nolan Williams was asked by Vet Solutions founders Marcus and Amber Capone if they would do a study. And I won't go into all the details, but they couldn't. I think Stanford couldn't justify doing a full-blown study, but he did say that we'll follow and look at the symptomology of TBIs. And they did that. And Dr. Williams and Stanford and Vet Solutions all released the findings of this year-long study by Stanford in Nature magazine last January. And it's extraordinary. And he talked about it on the Andy Huberman show, and Dr. Huberman, also out there at Stanford. And he discussed, we can't fully explain it, but it's like an exquisite symphony of the mind with this plant from nature, created by God, interacting with the physiology of the brain, sparking neurogenesis, repairing broken neural pathways, giving guys, the prefrontal cortex, executive functioning back, calming the amygdala, and allowing guys the space, almost like a reset.
Yeah.
And I know the VA is doing, I believe, psilocybin, MDMA testing as well. And again, I'm not advocating for drug use. I've never used drugs or recreational use. In the context of healing, though, these things psychedelics are coming out of nature. 5-MeO-DMT comes from a toad. Iboga comes from a plant. Psilocybin comes from mushrooms. And, I'm not real sure. We don't have to get in the pharmaceutical industry, but,
Yeah.
I was on pill, every type of antidepressant that the Army and the VA could give me.
Yeah, and we had...
I did talk therapy. I did rehabs. Nothing gave me space from the depression until I went down to Mexico for the first time in February of 2023.
Yeah,
and
so,
that literally took the alcohol away.
Yeah, let's talk about the totality. So you have PTSD, 100% disabled veteran. You have TBI, traumatic brain injury. You tried 3 30-day rehabs, right?
3 30-day rehabs while on active duty, yeah.
The 5-month California trip.
And then 2 5-month ones.
2 5-month
in California and Oregon. Yep.
Coupled with your life being ripped apart because of everything that we discussed on the family situation. And this presented itself, you are still in a relentless pursuit. Even if it's not pretty, you're still trying to find the light during all this. And you thought you'd give it a shot.
Whatever it took to heal, man. Even being out there in Oregon. And I lived after I finished the 5 months out there, I got a small house at the foot of Mount Hood, got a Jeep, and stayed out there and just kind of lived in nature and tried to, okay, who am I now? What am I doing? And I had to come back to Florence. And the reason I came back to Florence too is because I was watching the kids' grades online and they missed, 20-something days of school. for 2 years in a row. And so, I moved back in 23. And as soon as I moved back, it again proved difficult. Third child had been born. The kids disappeared again. We don't need to go into all that, but it was a second parental abduction. It kept continuing. And so I went back. The depression kind of came back. The drinking was gone. The first bout had taken the drinking completely. The depression lifted. And so I went back to Mexico last July. And coming out of that, I could probably sit here and talk for 2 episodes on
the difference that made.
So here we are, kind of fast forwarding. I'm conscious of time. At the end of these 7 years, and the healing, the journey through all that you just talked about, the relentless pursuit of healing, the relentless pursuit of God, or at least never letting go of my faith, never giving up, not caring about the stigma against me if I've got to go here or I've got to go there, whatever it takes to get me back and find me.
You had to shed a skin.
I shed a lot of skin, man.
Yeah, because you had to be willing to. Well, it sounds like you're willing to do.
You have to park all ego and pride when you're.
Follow the path.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. You mentioned it as a potential or a controversial topic within the Christian community, but you wanted to talk about it and want to talk about it and mention it because you felt like it couldn't be skipped over with the psychedelics and
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm not obviously going to comment too much. I want to let you speak for yourself for a situation that's unique to you. But even with the DEA schedules, the only thing that's interesting to me is like if you, and I'm not sure, I don't have all the previous classes in front of me that I've taken on narcotics history, drug identification, and so I want to ask for some latitude here. But if you asked people in the community, there's oftentimes an incredible lack of knowledge of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is. I guess we could say there probably should be. I don't know, but it's like cocaine, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
it goes back to psychedelics in the '60s and that movement.
Yeah,
and it's kind of it was abused. It was given a bad kind of.
And so, but that's what interests me about when you look at the DEA schedules and how they classify narcotics, what the punishments are, their potential for abuse, legitimate medical use, and things like that. And so if you ask someone, how do you feel about cocaine? What's everybody going to say?
Right. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
It's illegal. It's bad.
So what if we said, well, you can use cocaine in nasal and eye surgeries? Well, it's like, well, so it's like, well, have you ever had eye surgery, and did they ever use it? So that's like one.
Or you're saying they do?
If I remember, cocaine has historically, at least at one time, and I don't know if it is or not still, but it has been used for nose and eye surgeries, I think. If I'm not mistaken, heroin was originally introduced by Bayer, the company, and I think marketed as having no addictive properties. Heroin. So there is a context here on, the knee jerk is, no, absolutely. But, okay, so if you have a leg surgery, are they going to use something to put you under? And so, if nothing else, I think there's a good talking point for Christians and something to be said there about, well, is it okay for one person and not okay for another? Is using this drug not okay for using this drug? Can we use...
What are the conditions?
Yeah, so I think it's a little deeper than a knee-jerk. Like, absolutely not. Well, it's like, well, are you going to be on opioids if you go to the hospital, which is one of the largest, the most widely abused drug, I think, in Alabama.
Yeah.
Next to alcohol
the
is
epidemic several years ago.
Yeah, opioids, and so it's unique that you're attributing a lot of your journey to that. And apparently, if there was some people who are working to get it signed in, it's drawing some interest.
I mean, you can't deny the studies that are out there, and the VA has very strong studies with MDMA and psilocybin, and again, in my journey, and I've got some chronic pain. I've got a titanium hip, been blown up over Arachno 6 and some other stuff. But I'm incredibly functional. I mean, I'm in phenomenal shape. I mean, I really, again, that's, but talking on the far side of the 7 years where I'm at now, the restoration. I'm not saying God does this for everyone. We don't know how long our suffering is going to last. We don't know what the outcomes could be, but He has blessed me with a strong body, at least that. And I was offered for many years opioids, etc. And like I said, I was taking antidepressants. But I knew with the alcohol, I couldn't mix in other things because it's called a spade. I knew I was drinking myself to death. I didn't want to exasperate it with pills, and so I never had tried any other kind of drug. And psychedelics came into my path. Those 2 references in the same week, and then a third one was a guy that knew Marcus Capone and played college football with him in this town. And so the magazine article,
the spider web is growing,
and 2
these
people,
coincidences, so to speak.
yeah, from the church, and it's like, okay, I need to get in touch with them. And I mentioned Chris Thompson very early on, I think in the first episode, and he is he's on their staff out there. And so when I applied to him, I saw his name, and I went out there in 23 for their annual fundraiser, and. They flew several vets in to come in and kind of help raise funds with a lot of people. Dan Crenshaw was there. Rick Perry from Texas was there. Texas just passed legislation for stuff. And Chris Thompson was there. And we hadn't seen each other 20-something years since Afghanistan. And there we are, and we're kind of making the joke. This will be a bad joke, but if 20 years ago somebody had said, "Hey man, the war's not going to end for a long time, and in 20 years I'll see you in Mexico to do drugs to feel better, and then go surf in the Pacific Ocean." Now that's a dark humor joke, but the point is,
someone will appreciate it.
Somebody will appreciate it, man.
That 1 out of 10.
Yeah,
out there.
yeah.
No,
but
that's funny.
But it's extraordinary healing, and so the second time I went, it last July I had to go back. Things kind of fell apart again when I moved back here. But it's almost like God's shown me, we have to be able to live in the world, but not be of the world.
Yeah.
And that these people will always be difficult. These people, they don't know God. And again, I've had to forgive my ex-wife for myself. I even said that on the stand in court a couple of years ago. When someone continues to perpetually abuse you, how do you forgive that person? Well, you just do. You do it for yourself, whether they accept it or not. And so I had to come to peace with that, and I have her to thank for where I'm at. I've gotten into music now, kind of like we talked about. I've gotten back into my art, writing, and the path that God put me on these past 7 years. And in the context of all the rehabs, all the talk therapy, all the doctors, all the studies I've been in, everything else, I want to go into the field to help the most difficult cases, that are out there within the special ops community. Guys and gals, they're struggling with, suicidal intention, ideation, the lack of the will to live, whatever it is, to find what is that recipe for that person.
Yeah, so let's talk about some hurdles to healing real quick. In whatever realm you're in, either in the church and you don't want other people to know because it could be embarrassing, or military man on the way to Kentucky to a hotel room, or a family woman or family man who's quietly drowning. What are some hurdles to healing? Things being used against you?
A teenager.
Yeah, a teenager, anybody. Stigma, fear, losing friendships, career setbacks, educational aspiration setbacks. I mean, there's a lot of things. So I guess my question is, being through everything you've been through now, What's maybe something you could tell them while they're driving on their way or getting a ride or walking to where they're going, and they have that same mentality, they're in that same type of place that you were in, and they might listen to this, and they heard this podcast. What would you say to them to help them to find the healing that you've experienced?
Well, the first thing I'd say in the context of a listener who needs to hear this, I wish I could have heard something like this, and maybe I did. Maybe it's what helped me get through it. I don't even remember. But if you're listening, you know God. God is sovereign. First and foremost, God is sovereign, and we have free will. And the world, we live in a fallen world, and evil does exist. It's very real. The dark does exist, but God is sovereign. God acts in ways that we may never understand. But in terms of where you're at, suffering, at least having that conversation with God, or finding a few very close friends that you can walk through that suffering with, I actually think that's extremely critical. Let's say this is also for people that know someone who's in that condition. Be a friend to that person. Embrace that person. Now, it may take a while for them to get through it. It doesn't mean that you have to accept everything they do. You may have to withdraw for a while. The person has to eventually want to break free of it, But support that person, love that person, and for that person, know that you're loved. If by nothing else you feel like you belong nowhere in this world, you're a child of God. And we're not of this world. We're sojourners. We're foreigners in this world, as Paul talks about.
Yeah. And that's the thing about all of this, just the pride and perception and the path of healing. I mean, I get emotional when I think about this, and, who knows what's true out there or not, but I think it's true. There's a picture of a headstone that a father had made for his son who passed away. And it's a kid in a wheelchair who's leaping for joy, because that transition to life, that was the perception of a father who wanted the best for his son too. And so the perception for some people might be a lack of empathy. Like, life is great for me. I've had no hardships. Nothing's wrong in my life, and everything's great. And you need to get your life together. But the perspective from some people is so heavy, and it views things differently. It sheds a different light on things than that it might for other people. And so I think that it's well said, approaching God, seeking out strong friends, those friends also being thick-skinned. It might take a while, the long-term mentality, asking for help, shedding the skin, realizing that the new you is going to be better than the old you, and there is hope moving forward, especially in Jesus Christ. But I think that perception, it's like for one person's school experience, it might be the best thing ever. Captain of the team, grades come naturally, safe home. For another kid, it's abuse. Yeah. It's going home is...
They don't want to go home.
They don't want to go home, because when they go home, it's a lack of safety. Yeah. It's one parent getting beat almost to death, or carrying their family member.
Abuse of the child.
Yeah, I mean,
within the family.
And so you ask that kid, what was it like? Two totally different answers. Yeah. One person might be complacent about school and take it for granted. The other one, it's a safe space with a teacher who sees them. So on this path to healing, I just think that we have to pursue God with everything that we have, and we do have to be mindful. We have to be mindful of other people's situations, that it might be a different set of circumstances than what you're in.
And again, I want to caveat that too. All great points, and you probably have good insight into that as working with youth and being within the church. It's very important, I think, to remark also, again, it's worth saying that you can't judge another person's healing journey.
Yeah, it looks different. It looks
different for everybody. And spiritual healing, again, if your faith's in God, can come, but we may not understand the timeline. Again, I go back to God's sovereignty. I think it's very important to note that it's not a generic catch-all. It's not a way out or around the conversation, but there may be no resolution that you truly see. But how do you find acceptance in that and find God's will for your life through what you bear? Sometimes it might just be, I have to bear this. God, what next?
That requires significant maturity and growth.
It does. Emotional maturity, spiritual maturity. So be it. What next? That's the best I could probably say.
Yeah, so how does that tie into, maybe this even might reveal itself, but knowing God versus knowing about God?
Oh, great question. Great question. So I've always had a very strong faith. And again, I've talked over the course of these podcasts about drifting, about wavering, about coming back into the fold, about lay ministry, men's ministry, serving as a deacon, even pursuing God to the point that, when the Army offered me to pay for my master's degree, I said, well, study theology. Why not? And people kind of looked at me sideways and said, what are you doing with that? Like, I don't know, but if I can study God, what greater thing to study, and the Army paid for it. So
it's timeless.
Yeah. And so
that's exactly right.
But I do have a relationship with God, and Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And I know a lot about God, theologically, philosophically, etc. But what I can say now, after the journey, is that I didn't understand what it was like to love God as just a child either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I am a child of God, and he says that over and over. Maybe that's why I've talked about children so much in these last couple, because I can also just sit before him, and I've found a lot of peace, probably because of the years of being alone, self-isolated, etc., in contemplative prayer, and just sitting on my mat, on a couple of blocks, and just sitting before him as a child. And there's different types of prayer. There's petitionary prayer, there's praise, there's conversational prayer, there's reflection, there's many types of prayer. And sometimes just being still, be still and know that I'm God. Psalm 46:10 is just
that is absolutely countercultural right now.
It is. And so you don't have to be a great theologian. You don't have to be able to quote 1,000 scriptures. You might be, or you can be simply a child of God and love God that simply. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, all that I thought I knew about God, I now realize how much I don't even know.
Yeah.
That's what's so beautiful. That's how awesome our God is. And if you really think about it, in this culture too, we've gotten away from the recognizing, I would say, it's just of being in awe of God. AWE.
Yes.
Yeah. His just as our creator. Yeah, it's not just the emotional moments in singing, praise, and worship. It's not just Bible study. It's not just church for an hour on Sundays. It's sitting still and listening to the birds outside, taking in all of nature, and recognizing that God has acted throughout the history of the world, and our God is an awesome God.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And I would also add in being discipled by God, led by the Holy Spirit. I think that sometimes is a topic that is a little more challenging to mentally comprehend and for some to acknowledge.
Sure.
Is that it's not a... God is a relational being, and he's alive.
Yes, very alive.
Being discipled by God is a very specific thing.
It's going to be a place where you're open to it. Yeah. But just loving God simply as a child.
Yeah. I was reading one of those kid books, these biblical books you read to your kids or children. And I don't know if you've ever had an experience like this, but, obviously it's about Jesus and the one leper out of 10. And it moved me to tears. And it's funny because, it's funny because you kind of like, you look at yourself, you're like, what are you doing? But you're reading this kid book and, and there's this, it talks about this family man who isolated from his family because he was a leper. And to not spread the disease to them, he went and lived with these other 10 lepers. And I think this was the story that, where he was healed and then one went back to thank Jesus for that healing. But what got me was this guy who was in pain, and he heard about this person. He heard about this person that was restoring the sight to the blind and who was making people who couldn't walk again, and who was forgiving people of their sins. And imagine the hope that awoke in them.
Sure. Yeah.
Who is this person? And I don't know, that's a special theme for me, is like the hope to the hopeless. And can you imagine hearing about this person who had the hope that he could fix him? Not just physically, but also spiritually. And so I hope that also is the hope that you can find in our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
If you're hurting.
Yeah.
I mean, you are in pain, you are isolated, you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, you are silently drowning, you might be drowning yourself in alcohol. You didn't ask for any of this, you wouldn't have guessed it as a question on your test, but you hear about this person called Jesus Christ who will take your sins away. He invites you into a relationship with you. He will heal you, maybe in various ways, but we do know that God is sovereign. And I think that's a message worth proclaiming.
It absolutely is. And it's a beautiful thing. I mean, if the essence of God is love, if God's purest essence is love, that means that God's love is in all things. It's in all of nature around us. We know that we have the Holy Spirit within us. And so that if you don't know God, that deep felt need that you have for love, that so many broken people have, there's always going to be a void until you realize that the love actually emanates from God himself. That's his purest essence.
Right.
That is what we have with the Holy Spirit. And so if you feel empty, if you feel broken, if you don't know God, if you don't know Jesus Christ as your Savior, the only way to find that eternal love is to pursue him.
Relentlessly.
Nothing can replace his love. You can't find that kind of love in this world.
That's right. And there's nothing that can keep you from him either, or to keep him from you. Nothing can separate you from the love of God.
That's right.
And I mean, isn't that a beautiful thing?
Yeah, no promise.
Well, Rob.
Well, John.
Let me ask you this: we have waded through some tough waters here. How are you now?
I don't carry shame or guilt. I didn't do this to advocate for me or tell a bunch of cool war stories or even difficult stories. It was to get to these last 2 episodes. That was the point. To talk about you can have all those things. You can be great at your job. You can get accolades. You can have adventure, have fun, have extraordinary people around you. You can travel through the world. Whatever. It can all disappear in a blink on ice. The ice are falling out of the tree. And you're completely disoriented. It's like you're drowning. You don't know which way's up, and you can find yourself there. Anyone can, and the point was to get to these last two episodes to talk about never losing hope, never giving up. To those that are struggling, hold what you got, pursue your healing relentlessly. Don't be afraid to find somebody that you trust to say, I need a 2-man. I need a buddy. I need to talk about this with somebody. Don't hold it inside. To the people that are in churches that know about people suffering, go talk to that person. Go talk to them privately. To the people that are healers, thank you. For being there for the people that need it. And when I say healers, I mean doctors, nurses, therapists, whatever, in general. To the people that question, why things happen. Don't lose your faith in God. Just hold your faith and stay steadfast in prayer, at least in Scripture, until you see some kind of light on the path. God's still with you. He hadn't left you.
Well, thank you for being willing to share some very tough things. And the fruits of that growth that you experienced, and a first-hand account of your life, and even bringing the listeners to now, to where you're at, setting down where you are in a state of your shame and guilt being set down, playing music in a good place. And you can get there too. Appreciate for everything that you said and all the words, and hope you find some hope out of this.
Yeah, brother. Past is Prelude. Just getting started.
You just finished listening to episode 4, part 4 of the Birds Words podcast. Thanks, Rob, for all the discussion. And if you are the one who needed to hear all this, we hope that it's brought you some hope. Check out the resources in the description, and if you haven't yet, follow us on social media, sign up for our emails, leave a review, and reach out to birdswordspodcast@gmail.com, and we'll catch you on the next one.